Liam always kept things quiet. His one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a narrow brick building in Syracuse was nothing special, but it was his. He worked remotely as a data entry specialist, a job that paid just enough to cover rent, groceries, and the occasional bottle of wine on Friday nights. Most days he followed the same rhythm. Wake up at 8, shower, breakfast, log in by 9, break at noon, log off by 5. Evenings were silent, sometimes a walk, sometimes an old documentary playing softly in the background while he read in. Bed. There was a comfort in this routine, a kind of invisible blanket he wrapped around himself. He didn't have many friends in the city. Calls home were rare. Most of the time, it didn't bother him. He liked the quiet. The apartment had thin walls, but the neighbors were considerate. The floor creaked, but predictably. He knew which step near the kitchen always gave him away. He even knew the sound the pipes made when the heat kicked in, a low, delayed groan like the building sighing in its sleep. It was during one of those ordinary evenings, tea in hand and the muted flicker of his monitor lighting the room, that he first noticed the crack. It was in the wall next to his desk, running vertically, just an inch or two long. He hadn't seen it before, but figured it had always been there. The building was old, after all. Settling, maybe. He made a mental note to ask the landlord, then promptly forgot about it. The next few days passed without anything notable. Liam submitted reports, answered emails, scrolled through news headlines he barely read. The crack stayed the same, or so he thought. On Thursday evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline and shadows stretched long across the carpet, something about it seemed different, not longer or wider, just different. It caught the light strangely, as if the paint beneath it had darkened ever so slightly. He leaned closer, frowned, and shrugged it off. Probably just the angle that night. As he lay in bed with the street lamp's dull orange glow pressing through the blinds, a thought crept in, not fear, not even unease, just a whisper of doubt. Had the crack always been there? He didn't answer himself. But before he fell asleep, he got up, walked into the living room, and stared at it again, just in case. On Friday, the apartment felt colder than usual. Not physically, exactly. The thermostat read the same, but in the way a room feels just after someone leaves, or right before a storm. Liam noticed it while brushing his teeth. The silence seemed too deep, too smooth, like something had been erased. He turned off the water and stood there, listening, the toothbrush still in his hand. Foam gathering at the edge of his lip. Nothing, but the silence pressed in from all sides. That afternoon, while updating a spreadsheet, he glanced up at the wall. The crack was still there, unchanged. Yet it felt different again. It no longer looked like damage, it looked intentional, centered, almost too vertical. He stared at it for several seconds before blinking and returning to his work. But the image stayed in his mind like an afterimage burned into the back of his eyes. At 3:42 a.m., a sound woke him. Not loud, a whisper, maybe, or the sound of fabric dragging along the floor. He sat up, heart thudding, and waited. The apartment was still, the shadows unmoved. After a minute, he climbed out of bed and checked each room. Nothing. Yet when he returned to the bedroom, the closet door was slightly ajar. He always closed it before sleep. He was certain of it. He stood there, staring into the dark slit, debating whether to look inside. Eventually, he shut it quietly and backed away. In the morning, a new notification glowed on his laptop screen. No app was open. Just a message, centered perfectly on the desktop in plain black font. "I can hear you." He stared at it for a long time, fingers hovering above the keyboard. There was no sender, no program, just those 4 words, sitting calmly in the middle of his screen. He powered the laptop off, then on again. The message was gone. The rest of the day, he moved more slowly, less certain of his space. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the window, felt like something trying to get his attention. At night, he placed a strip of painter's tape over the crack. A simple act, irrational but comforting. A way of saying, "I'm still in control." Then he sat on the couch, lights dimmed, waiting for the room to settle. It didn't. At 4:06 a.m. The tape lay on the floor, peeled back in one clean motion, and the crack was longer. By Sunday, Liam no longer trusted his senses. Not fully. The apartment hadn't changed, and yet nothing felt familiar. The way the air moved around him, the soft clicks and thuds of the building, it all sounded slightly off, like someone imitating what a home should sound like. He kept telling himself he was tired, that it was just stress. But when he opened the silverware drawer and found all the forks turned upside down, stacked neatly like they'd been organized by a stranger, the tightness in his chest deepened. He tried calling his sister. She picked up, cheerful at first, but his voice wavered when he spoke. He told her he was feeling off, that his place was acting strange, that he couldn't sleep. She laughed it off, told him he needed sunlight, maybe a hike. But he heard it, the pause in her voice, the hesitation. When he mentioned the crack, she stopped responding after that, said she had to go, promised to call tomorrow. She didn't. That night, Liam sat in bed with all the lights on. He didn't want to look at the wall, but his eyes kept drifting toward it. The crack had grown. Again, it now ran nearly a foot down the plaster, and the edges were darker than before, like moisture had soaked into the paint. He ran his fingers along it. The surface felt warm, not room temperature warm, like skin. He snatched his hand back. Then came the sounds. They started soft scratches like fingernails dragging across cardboard. Then the occasional knock. Never at the door. Always from behind the wall. He put on music to drown it out, but the rhythm never matched. The tapping continued just underneath the noise, syncing with his pulse. Around 3, he caught a movement in the corner of his eye. He turned quickly, nothing, but the light in the hallway flickered once, then steadied. He told himself it was just wiring, old bulbs. He went to the fridge for water. Inside, the light didn't come on. The bulb had never failed before. Returning to the bedroom, he noticed the crack had changed shape. It no longer trailed downward. It curved slightly now, like the beginning of a spiral. Like something was trying to open. He didn't sleep. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed until morning, fingernails digging into his palm, waiting for the sun. But when the light finally came through the blinds, it looked different. Like it wasn't meant for this room, or this world. Monday morning passed like a dream Liam couldn't wake from. His movements felt disconnected from intention, pouring coffee, unlocking the laptop, blinking at the same spreadsheet he'd stared at 3 days before. He didn't remember opening the curtains, but daylight had flooded the room in a way that felt too aggressive, too bright for a space that had grown used to shadows. The light revealed something else. The crack in the wall had changed again. It was now shaped like a question mark, with the curve widening, spreading toward the baseboard. He stood in front of it for nearly 10 minutes, unmoving, unable to explain why it now resembled something purposeful. He didn't log into work. He couldn't. Instead, he sat on the couch, with his arms wrapped around his knees, the television off, the apartment quiet, not silent quiet. A pressure still lingered behind the walls, beneath the floor. It wasn't noise, exactly. It was the expectation of noise. The way you can sense someone in the next room, even if they don't speak. The air tasted metallic. By late afternoon, his phone buzzed. A new voicemail. No missed call. Just a message with no number, time-stamped 3:33 a.m. He stared at it, debating whether to listen. Then he pressed play. His own voice filled the room, but slower, more hollow. "You shouldn't have looked at it," the voice said. "It sees you now." Liam threw the phone. It bounced against the wall and landed near the baseboard. Screen. Still glowing. That night, he pushed a chair against the closet door, unplugged every appliance, and taped the cracks shut again. 2 strips, then 3, then 6. He turned off every light but one. Then he sat in the armchair and waited. The apartment no longer felt like his. It felt staged, dressed up like a memory of itself. The furniture was correct. The smells were familiar. But nothing held weight. He could feel it like walking through a dream built by someone who never lived there. At 2:17 a.m., the light bulb in the corner lamp dimmed and not flickered, dimmed, as though something placed a hand over it. Then the tape peeled itself back. In one long curling motion. Liam didn't move. He couldn't. The drywall where the crack had been was breathing slowly, rhythmically. Then came the photo. It hadn't been there before, but now it lay neatly centered on his desk, a Polaroid. It showed Liam asleep in bed, blanket pulled to his chest, but in the background, behind him, barely visible, stood a second figure, unblurred, watching. Liam didn't sleep. The photograph remained on the desk where he found it, untouched, yet vibrating with presence. He studied it for hours, tracing every line, every detail. It was him, no doubt, his bed, his blanket, the small scar on his temple. But he had never taken this photo, and no one had been in his apartment. That certainty was all he had left. Still, the figure behind him haunted him. It wasn't a shadow or a trick of light. It was human-shaped, but featureless. Head tilted slightly, hands at its sides. Just watching. He wrapped the photo in a dish towel and shoved it into a drawer, hoping distance would dull its impact. It didn't. He started unplugging everything: microwave, television, modem, even the fridge. He no longer trusted the silence between devices, the hiss of electronics that once lulled him to sleep. Now, it all felt like whispering. By Wednesday, his own reflection had begun to feel foreign. In the bathroom, he noticed his image blinking out of sync, just once, but it was enough. He covered the mirror with a blanket and avoided the room entirely. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, not just by something outside, but inside the apartment, inside the walls. He began talking to himself out loud. Simple things: his name, the date, the weather. He needed to remind himself that he was still there, still real. But by Thursday, even his voice betrayed him. In a moment of panic, he heard himself speak, but the echo came first. A breath before. His own words, fainter, lower, like something rehearsing him from behind. He wrote a note in bold, block letters, and taped it to the fridge. My name is Liam. I live in apartment 2B. I am awake. In the morning, it was gone. In its place, a handwritten reply: not anymore. That same day, the crack widened. Not in size, but in presence. The wall felt wrong, now, just damaged, but hollow, breathing. When he pressed his palm to it, the surface was warm, the same warmth of the Polaroid. He backed away slowly, retreating to the far side of the room, curling into the couch like a child. At 3:04 a.m., the television turned itself on. Static filled the room. Liam reached for the remote, but the screen flickered and froze, showing a still image. The Polaroid, but this time, Liam wasn't asleep. He was sitting up, eyes open, staring directly at the camera, and smiling. Liam stopped checking the time. He no longer trusted the clock on his wall or the one in his phone. They disagreed with each other, always by a few minutes, then by 10, then by hours. Eventually, the hands on the analog clock spun without pause, as if chasing something they could never catch. He pulled the batteries out, but the ticking continued. It echoed faintly through the apartment, like it was coming from somewhere else. He moved the furniture toward the center of the room, away from the walls. His mattress lay in the middle of the floor now, with every mirror covered and every reflective surface turned to face the wall. He spoke less, even to himself. When he did, his voice sounded thinner. Not wrong, just distant. The messages returned. Sometimes in his handwriting, sometimes printed. Notes appeared on the back of cupboard doors, beneath his pillow, inside the fridge. Don't forget who you are. They are watching through the cracks. The other version is almost ready. Each message carried his name, but none felt like his thoughts. One night, the power went out. Not a storm, no explanation, just silence, the kind that presses in like cotton against the ears. He lit candles and waited, unsure what for. That's when the noise began: soft thumps from inside the wall. Not rodents, not pipes. Measured, rhythmic, like someone knocking from inside with their knuckles. He walked toward the sound, heart pounding with a strange calm. There was a logic to all of this now, in a way he couldn't explain. He pressed his ear to the wall. Behind it, something breathed. Not like a machine, like a person. Slow, steady. Then a whisper, just one word. Closer. He stepped back. The drywall bulged ever so slightly. It wasn't an illusion. A perfect square, about the size of a panel, pushed outward like something behind it had leaned too close. Liam picked up a hammer. He didn't think. He just struck. Once, twice. The wall gave way like wet paper. Behind it was a hollow cavity. Maybe 4 feet deep, lined with faded wallpaper he didn't recognize. And inside, seated on an identical chair to the one in his room, was a man. It was him, same face, same clothes. But his mouth had been sewn shut. Black thread pulled tight. His eyes were wide, alive. A mirror without glass. Liam staggered back. But his feet didn't move fast enough. From the hallway, the mirror he had covered began to hum softly. And behind the fabric, something knocked once, then whispered, "One of you has to go." The apartment remained still. The broken wall gaped open like a wound. The mirror in the hallway pulsed with an unnatural hum. And Liam could not tell if he was standing or dreaming. The man his copy remained frozen in the crawlspace. Lips. Sewn eyes pleading, as if he had been waiting for someone to finally see him. Liam backed away slowly, but the distance between them didn't feel real. His own breath didn't match his heartbeat. His body no longer answered to him with certainty. He closed the door to the cavity and pushed the chair in front of it, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Something had been let in, or let out. The boundaries had shifted. There were now 2 Liams. In the apartment hand, one had always been watching. That night, Liam sat on the floor, knees to his chest, staring at the mirror he had once covered. The cloth had slipped off, revealing a dull reflection. But it wasn't reversed. The scar on his temple was on the wrong side. The lamp behind him flickered in the reflection, but not in the room. When he raised his hand, the reflection hesitated. Before following, a half-second delay, he whispered, "Which one of us is real?" The mirror did not answer, but the reflection smiled. Then it blinked slow and deliberate without him. The lights cut out again. Complete darkness. Not the kind pierced by street lamps or electronic glow, but a full blackout that made even the apartment's shape uncertain. In the silence, he heard breathing, not his. Closer this time, then the soft click of fingernails tapping glass, and then typing that his laptop had turned on. Lines of text appeared on the screen, one letter at a time. "You shouldn't have looked. You shouldn't have listened. Now you stay. Now you stay." Liam screamed, but the sound felt muffled, like he was underwater. He ran to the door. It opened, but revealed only more hallway. Identical wallpaper. Another door at the end. Same number, to be. He opened it and stepped through. It was his apartment, the same layout, the same chair. But the air was wrong. Too warm, too quiet. He turned back, but the door was gone now. Someone else lives in the original to be. They never met Liam, but sometimes, at night, they find handwritten notes under the fridge. The lights flicker at exactly 3:33 a.m. They dream of a man with no mouth, and in the walls, a crack begins to form. Perfectly vertical. Breathing softly, waiting.